Notes before we get started. Thanks for coming. If you missed the prime rib and you eat meat, you should get up and get it now. It's dinner time. It was kind of in an awkward position. So seriously, don't be shy. If you eat meat, you should get up right now. I won't be offended and go grab some prime rib. Good. This guy got the right idea. Good. Thank you. Everyone else wants the prime rib, go get it. After dinner, there will be a shortbread buffet over here. We've got an open bar. Cocktail servers are coming by. They specialize in beers here, but please drink whatever you like. We've also got this area reserved for pool and darts and stuff. People have time to hang out afterwards. So thank you so much for coming. It is such a pleasure to see some really old dear friends, some family members, some folks I've been in touch with for 5 or 6 years, who have invested money with me and been mentors to me. I've never met them in person before. And some folks who are brand new friends. Really appreciate everyone coming. I appreciate my team being here. So let's see if this works. Good. I need to give a big thank you to Stephanie Cawley. Is Stephanie here? Okay. She's here because it doesn't surprise me. Stephanie is, where is she? She's my amazing executive assistant. She makes things run. If you are part of your communities, will you stand up real quick? Or WGP or Amber Homes or any of our other affiliated entities. Cool. Thank you. So let's do some really quick introductions. Maybe you can say your name, your title, and where you're based. So, Corey, want to kick this off?
Sure. COO, Salt Lake City, Utah.
You can say, first name, last name, Corey Wickstrom here.
Erin Williams, VP of Sales, Marketing, and Procurement. And I'm based in Texas, Houston.
Yoel Kelman, co-founder and principal, currently based in Maine, and spending some time in Israel.
Keep going on.
Hi, Ruby, Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, and I live in Brooklyn.
You know, through color statement, if you guys can stand by that TV, I think everyone will be able to see you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Maxine Rodney. I'm a regional manager based out of San Diego.
Mike Skashless, CFO based out of Los Angeles and Israel.
Matthew Gillespie, sales manager. I'm in Bozeman, Montana.
So I hope you guys get a chance to chat with the team and see that this is just a sliver of the team, right? This is kind of the core leaders in our company, and I hope you guys get a chance to speak with everyone. So I want to start with a few numbers. We've grown to 71 communities. We're in 14 states. We have around 120 employees. The value of the portfolio is around $500 million. We've done 13 deal round trips. That means we bought it and we've either sold it or we've refinanced it and pulled capital back at an appraised value. And on those 13 deals we've round tripped, we've generated close to a 50% IRR. On average, we've tripled our money. And if we measure something called value increase. So if we paid $1 million for the property, typically a few years later it's worth $1.8 million. That is thanks to these guys. It's also thanks to good market conditions over the past few years, so we can't take all the credit. I would not ever say that these returns are sustainable or replicable. I'm not promising that anyone's getting a 48% return, but this is actually what we have been able to do over the past few years. Pretty exciting, especially for the folks in the room here who, I've got law school classmates here who saw the birth of 3 Pillar Communities. I've got early investors in the room who, we were begging for a $20,000 check to buy our second property. And it's pretty remarkable for me to look at this map and see we're covering the whole country. I appreciate everyone who's mentored us and been a part of the journey. So we want to talk about where we came from. This is my family story and Yoel's family story. My mother was born on a chicken farm in Israel. So was my grandfather. They were poor. My grandfather was sick of being a poor farmer and fighting in wars. and moved to America in 1967 with his wife and his 2 daughters and a few suitcases and $100 in his pocket. And he hustled really hard. He ended up buying wrecked cars at a junkyard and fixing them up and selling them. Eventually opened a body shop. I used to help him there in the summer with bumpers and paint and that kind of stuff. And eventually saved up enough money to buy a mobile home park. So I come from a very scrappy, entrepreneurial immigrant family, which honestly is an education that I value probably more highly than my Yale education. Yoli, you want to talk about your family?
Yeah, a lot of similarities. So my grandparents on my mother's side were Holocaust survivors. Lived in Romania after the war, in communist Romania, and moved to America in 1973. My grandfather was a butcher, and he always had 2 or 3 jobs. He was a furniture mover, and eventually became a real estate investor, buying duplex, triplexes in Baltimore. And growing up, I would paint and change carpet, and replace cabinetry, and deal with some disgusting plumbing issues, and really learned how to work with my hands, and like kind of similar to Daniel, like a really valuable education and experience. Definitely a lot of like under my breath vowing that I would never do real estate, working in plumbing and the like at the time, but got a lot out of that education.
So, some of you know how the co-founders of 3Pillar met, some of you don't. Tara, can you stand up for a second? She was not waiting to stand up. Yo, can you explain the relationship here?
So in 2008, my sister Tara calls me and says, I've been dating this guy for a month. He wants to come home and meet our parents. You need to come and be the buffer so that he doesn't get scared away. And I come home and I meet Daniel, who at the time was working at the State Department, traveling to a different country every week. I was convinced he was a spy. And I met, he became my good friend and my brother-in-law. And 5 months later we were engaged, a year later, or six months after that married. And Daniel and I have been good friends since we met, and did some real estate investing when we were both in graduate school. Daniel was at Yale, and he bought a house, turned it duplex to triplex. We bought another one together, so we knew we worked really well together. Investing, we have very, very different minds. We think very differently and complement each other very nicely. And then 2007, I had just sold my startup out of business school, and Daniel was leaving McKinsey, and calls me and says, let's start buying mobile home parks together. And 7 years later, and there we are.
So, thank you. Shouldn't mention you called out. So we didn't plan to do mobile home parks. Right? We did other things in our careers. And then we realized that this scrappy asset class that my Israeli grandfather had invested in as a car mechanic is probably the top performing real estate asset class that exists in the United States. And so I was, working this corporate grind job at McKinsey, trying to think, what should I really do with my life? And it was like, it hit me like a light bulb. This thing that's been in my family that I was around my whole life is actually an incredible financial investment and an incredible way to provide high quality, affordable housing to people who need it. And I realized I could really check those 2 boxes of financial profit and social impact. And I called up Yoel and I said, let's start a mobile home park company. So we realized we could break into mobile home parks kind of with a running start. My family had the story to tell. We've been doing it for 3 generations. And we brought insights from our education. Yoel was a CPA, I was a lawyer. We both got MBAs. And we shared that kind of family hustle, right? Same kind of background, same values. So you want us to talk about this conversation we had?
Yeah, so in business school, we talk a lot about culture winning, right? You can have great companies, but if you don't have like a good culture and kind of a leading star, like a beacon star, you're gonna kind of like lose your way. So at my last startup, it was really big. We kind of set our mission and our values, and really, really early on, the first couple of weeks of us doing this, we got to sit down and talk about what do we want this company to be. And like Daniel talked about, it's not just about profits for investors. It's really about a mission of delivering high-quality housing for people who need housing. And so we set out really with this 2-part mission for our company. It's to deliver safe and reliable housing for our residents and safe and reliable returns to our investors. And we always want to make decisions that are balancing the well-being of our residents and our investors. And in an industry where there's a lot of bad actors and a lot of bad reputation because the business model has so much power to the landlord. You can raise rents and people can't really move their mobile homes. And you read articles about people doing raising rents and kicking people out. And so we really wanted to set out building a business that's different. And that's kind of what we do with 3 pillars.
We defined our core values early on, brought in a whole team to do that, and it's integrity, respect, teamwork, owner's mindset, growth mindset. We just had our headquarters retreat here in Denver the past few days, spent a lot of time working through these, thinking through these, putting them into action. We want these to actually guide what we do every day, right? Not just have it as a poster on the wall. And so the early days of the company were really hands-on. In 2017, when we started, it was me and Yoel and one accountant. So you want to kind of talk about what we're seeing here?
This is a property called Renton Highland Manor we bought in 2017. It was, I think, our 3rd property that we bought. And it was kind of a diamond in the rough. It was in Renton, Washington, just outside of Seattle. And it was a 49-space community that was on the cusp of being redeveloped. It was actually under contract. The guy was going to kick everyone out, knock the whole community down, and build mixed-use retail and residential. And they couldn't get the money together. We learned about the deal. We ended up getting under contract. And if you look at it, you'd say, oh, it was a trailer park. But it was really a 49-space community of people who needed attainable housing. It was multi-generation families living together, a lot of hard-working families. And it was completely neglected. The guy who owned it before had planned on shutting it down and turning it into a museum for Jimi Hendrix, because Jimi Hendrix is buried across the street. When the city wouldn't let him, he decided to sell it. And we kind of scooped in and we said, the biggest problem at the time was that there were so many cars, nowhere to park. And so people would wake up in the morning and their driveway would be parked through, and they couldn't go to work in the morning. So we came in first day, we said no parking in the fire lane, we're going to tow your car if you park in the fire lane. There was this big mud grass area in the front of the property, and there were a bunch of abandoned cars. We towed all the abandoned cars. Daniel and I showed up, we stayed in this trailer with this guy Rich, and Rich knew how to drive the Bobcat, and Daniel and I learned how to drive the roller. And in 4 days, we built 2 parking lots in this community and totally transformed how it looked and how it functioned. We put in 20 parking spaces, and we told you if you have more cars, we're going to charge you for parking. People said, how much? We said, $25 a month. People said, charge more, we want the cars out. We charged $60 a month, we rented out all the spaces, and people would wake up in the morning happy that they could leave their spot reliably knowing that, it was available. And that was kind of the start of, really getting our hands dirty and being on site. We don't get to do that as often anymore, but it kind of speaks to the principles and how we want to run our business and how we feel like we should be creating value for our residents.
So we're fortunate now. We've been able to assemble a really high quality team. It's fun and exciting when you can hire top-notch talent and you don't have to do it all yourself. So this isn't even a complete landscape, but this is some of the folks who are currently on board at the leadership level. There's a lot more people layered in kind of horizontally and also reporting up to these folks. We spent time with a lot of these people this past week here in Denver, and some of them are here in this room. Don't read all the text on this slide, but the idea here is if you have time to go chat with Mike Skopoulos, our CFO, about what's going on in our finance function, if that's of interest to you. The kind of stuff we've been implementing there in financial management and reporting is electronic bill payments. All of our accounts payable now is handled digitally, implemented quarterly narrative reports, really cool relationships with how we're working with multiple CPAs. That's just a smattering of the kind of stuff we're doing. On the operations side, we have a full-time utilities analyst. All they do is analyze utility spend across the portfolio. We've built out a lot of really specific functions specializing in mobile home park management. Aaron, I'm sorry this slide is so ugly.
It's
But
okay.
I just want to shine a quick spotlight on Aaron, who's our head of manufactured home sales. Aaron, do you mind giving the quick 15-second talk on, I know, sorry I didn't warn you, but real quick, what you do, how it relates to creating value in our business, and maybe a sense of the volume, like how many homes were closed last month, we're going to close in a year, or something like that.
Yep, so I oversee all of our procurement, marketing, and home sales. So everything from working with our factories, picking out the homes, designing the homes, and making sure that they're in price points we could afford by market. We do all of our marketing. We've just built out an internal finance department, which offers our universal application and disclosures for us to be able to work with multiple lending partners and find our buyers the best rates possible. And we are, actually someone asked me yesterday, and I guess I can just like go, because they're like, how do you get a great sales team? And I'm like, you don't have to be a salesperson. There's nothing to sell when you believe in the product, right? So we, as Daniel said, like, we're here to provide affordable housing that, attainable housing people can afford. And so you don't have to be a salesperson to believe in your product. Like, it's something that everyone needs, and we're filling a space, and I love being in this industry, because I can go to bed every night feeling great about being able to provide people something they can afford, great housing. So kind of like,
Thank you.
thanks for the
Thank you.
putting me
I
on
should
the
have
spot,
warned
but
you.
yeah.
Thank you. So we just spent 3 days together in Denver. We did some touring of our parks. We did some strategy sessions talking about the future of our business. And we even did a painting project at Greeley RV Park, which some of you guys will visit with us tomorrow. And that felt really in line with our company values, right? When I started out painting, getting our hands dirty with our families, it felt good to bring all of our employees, including folks who work at a desk all the time, to get to go actually improve an asset. There was also some epic karaoke last night. I don't have pictures, unfortunately, but you can follow up about that. And or at least I think, we're truly a legit company once we have an employee newsletter. I was like, we're big enough that we need an employee newsletter, because we're bringing on, I think we've hired 47 people since January, including community managers. And you gotta keep up. So, this was last quarter, new hires that quarter, there was, 15, and we talked about company values, right? Every quarterly newsletter, we have a spotlight about one of our values. Someone talks about what it means to them in the job. We feature the new parks we brought on, park updates. We celebrate park wins and our awesome employees. We do an employee of the quarter. And we even have a really cute little recipe share. So this is from Elizabeth Gomez, who's our manager at Cypress Gardens in Delano, California. And she shared her recipe for Pacalito. So it's really fun, especially around the holidays. Yeah, I'm gonna make that at home. On the acquisition side, people often ask me how do we source deals. We have 6 people working in acquisitions full time, sourcing deals and underwriting deals and diligencing deals all over the country. We have some secret sauce in how we source, and people ask me, what's the secret sauce? And then I say, if I told you, it wouldn't be secret. So I'm not going to tell you the secret of the secret sauce, but we're doing a lot of things out there to see deal opportunities that our competitors aren't necessarily seeing.
I think to speak to that, I'd say
Oh, can you give the recipe?
No, I'm just going to give it on a percentage basis. Like, you look at the number of properties we acquired this year, it's probably 14. 9 of them came at once, maybe 15. I think one of them was listed.
I think that's right. I think probably less than 10% of what we bought has been listed. And I think people don't truly appreciate how many frogs we kiss before we find a prince. One of our investors, sophisticated financial guy, he's a CFA, for folks who know what that means, and he was at a career transition, and he actually joined our acquisitions team for 2 months to see what we do. And his biggest takeaway was, wow, I didn't realize in order to close a deal, you're looking at 100 deals. Of the 100 deals, you offer on 20 and some number gets accepted and a bunch of them we throw out, and the ones that get through are the ones that we have high conviction in. You want to chat through some of this stuff briefly?
Yeah.
How we actually create value in our properties?
So, I mean, the standard value add is you buy a property, raise rents, bring in homes, but we try and find other creative ways to do that. Upgrading homes is like, upgrading housing stock is kind of like the bread and butter. It's like you have empty spaces, you bring in new homes, you have abandoned homes or homes that have passed their life. Aaron really runs the show there. We try and upgrade our communities and community standards. People call mobile homes and manufactured homes like a depreciating asset. And in some ways that's true, and in some ways we've seen it the opposite. If you come in and you improve a community and you make it a place that people want to live, home values have gone up in a lot of our parks. And that's something we're proud of. 10M Innovations is you'll find at times in certain communities you have spaces that don't fit traditional manufactured housing sizes. But if there's a great need for housing, we've spent a bunch of time designing these cute little, it's like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, less than 400 square foot, floor plan that like is a great product that we kind of designed and brought into Ukiah, California, which is a housing constrained agricultural market. We have a couple parks that have done very well. And then the solar energy or renewable energy, we've found several we're kind of on our third now project where we have usually master metered communities. So we have one large utility bill for a community, we pay everyone's bill, we charge them back for their electricity, and we have an opportunity to put a solar system on there and significantly lower our electricity costs while also creating, offsetting with renewable energy. And in two of those projects, they were RV parks. And so long-term stay RV parks, people come and live in their RV, and one's in Bakersfield, California, and one's in just outside of Palm Springs. So you can actually, it's very hot. And when you build a canopy, a carport for these RVs, it actually becomes like a premium space. So we're actually like making residents more comfortable, creating alternative energy, and saving a bunch of money and getting great returns. So some of our value ideas.
I'll do a quick case study here. We just closed this deal about a month ago. Someone is here in this room who was integral in making it happen. Thank you for coming. This was our biggest deal to date. It was a $50 million acquisition, 9 parks in the Carolinas. I think this is pretty representative of how we're scrappy and look to create value. It was off market. The parks are pretty ugly. It's workforce housing. You would call these Class B or Class C mobile home parks. There are markets that we believe in that have robust demographics, a lot of affordable housing demand. We know that this tenant profile takes pride in their home. They really value living in our manufactured housing communities. And as we do our part to improve the communities, we are confident we'll be able to raise rents up to market value and make this a fair return for our investors. So thank you to everyone in this room who had a part in that acquisition. And it's an example of how we kick off a new market. We weren't previously in the Carolinas. I give our COO, Corey Wickstrom, a ton of credit here. Right? Corey is a 20-year veteran of our industry. He's turned around hundreds of parks all over the country. He has deep industry relationships. So when we said, hey, we're looking at this portfolio, he's like, all right, let me call my 10 buddies and find out what the rents should be in each of these markets and who are the home dealers we can work with. And let me call my best regional manager in the Carolinas from a prior company and see if we can bring them over to 3 Pillars, which is exactly what we did. And so we kicked off a brand new market with an awesome regional manager, 2 district managers already hired, setting up a maintenance crew. We have a CapEx plan in place with our valued partners. And this is how we're rocking and rolling. And we're developing new parks on raw land. So Matthew Gillespie here, if you can wave your hand, actually flew down from Bozeman for this event. He is our sales manager at our Bozeman property based in Bozeman. So 2.5 years ago, I flew out to Bozeman. I identified that as a target market for developing new parks. High growth market, really expensive housing stock. Median home price shot up to $700,000 during COVID. Normal people could not afford to buy a home. And I said, let's go build here. Let's go try it. Flew out there, met Mr. Dykstra, who's a farmer. His family's owned the land for 100 years. He was on his tractor. They shook hands, made a deal, closed on 90 acres, killer location, 7 minutes from the airport, 15 minutes from downtown, in the path of growth. Had a vision, right? We're going to turn it into a high quality neighborhood. Let's not call it a mobile home park. It's definitely not a trailer park. We're not even really emphasizing it's a manufactured housing community. This is Cameron Crossing, right? A brand new neighborhood where you can live your Bozeman lifestyle at an affordable price point. With a gorgeous 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with an attached garage. It doesn't even look like it's a manufactured home, right? You wouldn't know unless someone told you. And so that was the vision. We set out, we got, some of you invested with us, so thank you for the ones who shared our vision, right? We got the equity dollars, went out there, got unanimous approval from the county commissioners who said, yes, you're gonna help us solve our affordable housing crisis. Did all our engineering, all our design, got crews out there, started working all the way through the winter, set up our first model home. That's not a rendering, that's what one of our homes actually looks like on the inside. It's a beautiful home with a gas fireplace, farmhouse sinks, really nice countertops. It's a sweet house. And this here is a house that showed up about 2 weeks ago. right? Those are two halves of the two-section home that are waiting to be married up and set, so it will look like this. So this project is rolling. We're gonna have our first residents move in 2 or 3 months from now, and it's the hardest and most gratifying project I've ever done in my professional career.
I will do that.
It's hard, it's gratifying, and this is changing the face of our industry. For the folks in the room who are part of our industry, you can back that up, right? This is turning the trailer park stereotype upside down and showing the potential of manufactured housing to solve an affordability problem. So it's really exciting, and I think everyone on our team was making that happen. So I talked about our great returns, and I won't harp on it, but I'll just, one deal that I do think is worth mentioning is Fairplay and Turf, our two most recent deal round trips. Fairplay I'll bring up because it's about 2 hours from here in Colorado. We thought that we debated for tomorrow's park tour, would we go out that far to the mountains? We decided it was too far, so we're staying closer to Denver. But this is a property that serves the Breckenridge market, right? It's about 30 minutes from Breckenridge. High dollar ski town, lack of affordable housing. We saw a neglected mobile home park there. We were able to buy it off market, make a deal. It's off the beaten path, high elevation above the tree line, lots of snow. It's on a private well system. The roads were unpaved. We saw opportunity. Went in there, invested a lot of money, paved roads, upgraded the community. We're bringing in new homes. We were able to, we bought it for $7.5 million, and we refined it at a $10 million valuation about 1.5 years later. And we're keeping it and continuing to improve it. That's one example. The second example I'll give is Turf Mobile Manor in Phoenix. So high level, we bought it for $60 million 3.5 years ago. We sold it for $35 million 2 months ago. The reason I bring up this one is it shows you where the market is today in manufactured housing. There is so much investor demand to buy these parks because investors have realized that this is one of the most stable, recession-resistant forms of real estate you can buy. Because our tenants are homeowners, they want to live there, they've got skin in the game, and it's a very reliable cash flow. So in this market environment where office values are plummeting, and a lot of the conventional apartment market is kind of on the sidelines, kind of waiting to see what will happen, someone came in and paid us an incredible valuation 2 months ago in this market environment. I won't talk too long. I'll probably go over 2 or 3 more slides, and we'll do a couple questions, and I'll let you guys enjoy your dessert. We can mingle. So the way we're structured is we have around 500 individual investors, and we've set up a process to serve investors. Many of you are here. If you have feedback for us on how we can do that better, we'd very much like to hear from you. Some of our investors are in single property syndications, like they invested in a specific deal. We've also raised Fund 1 and Fund 2 and fully deployed those funds. And we will likely raise Fund 3 later this year. This is just an example of what some of our investor reporting looks like. We put this together about 2 weeks ago to summarize how Fund 1 performed during the second quarter of the year. And so we provide a narrative of kind of what's important, what's going on, and our insights on the portfolio, a breakdown by asset on how much capital is invested and what have the returns been, and we show that graphically. And then we provide really detailed property level reporting. So this is one property that's in the fund. This is actually a property that we'll visit tomorrow together for those folks who are coming tomorrow. And so we don't want to just give you a fund level return. We want to give you visibility to what's actually happening property by property. So we spend a lot of time as a leadership team every single quarter at the highest levels of the company doing a property by property review. We're on calls for 2 days, 3 days as a leadership team, talking to the regional managers, bubbling up all this information about units, occupancies, vacancies, delinquencies. Where do we need to spend more time? Where do we need more capital? What's the status on that plumbing project? We do that property by property, share the numbers with our investors, and also show pictures of what's going on when it's relevant. That's something we're proud of. We've gotten good feedback on our investor reporting. So I think this is the last slide for now, and we'll do a couple questions. What to expect tomorrow for those folks who are coming? Start at Kimpton Hotel in the morning. Buses, we're boarding buses at 8:15. Come earlier than that for breakfast, if you'd like. We'll have kind of grab and go breakfast available. We'll drive up to Greeley RV Park. Do a 45-minute property tour, walk around. And then we'll drive over to RV Retreat in Johnson's Corner, Johnstown, and then we'll, 100 yards up the road is Johnson's Corner Restaurant, Bakery, and Truck Stop. So what to expect tomorrow, we'll tell you the story behind the deals, why we bought them, what the due diligence went like, how we created value, right? And that means people, hiring, process, capital improvements, pricing, kind of all the things we've done to create value. We'll talk about infrastructure. I will confess, we have some real infrastructure experts here. So we probably won't, we may defer to the experts a little bit, but for those of you who are curious about how a well works, or a private septic system, or asphalt, or propane gas submetering, we'll look at some of those systems. We'll be going to RV parks. We'll talk about kind of where that fits in our portfolio and our strategy. I ask you to not expect perfection. These parks were really ugly when we bought them. So I should have put up the before pictures here so you know how much better they look. But I can tell you when we show up, I'm always thinking, oh no, we need to paint that door. Like, oh no, there's 2 weeds. So don't expect perfection. When we bought these properties, they were C-, and I would say now they're solidly B to B+, and we've got a lot more plans. We are going to an epic American diner and truck stop. This is actually the thing I'm most excited about. Johnson's Corner, founded by a family 80 years ago. Congress did an act of Congress to commemorate them for their American entrepreneurial spirit. Their cinnamon rolls are world famous. They're a Condé Nast Traveler. So for those of you who are coming tomorrow, you're in for a treat. And tomorrow over lunch, we'll do a Q&A with the leadership team. So Yoel and I will do less talking. We'll have Corey, our head of operations, Aaron, our head of home sales, Mike, our chief financial officer, maybe the other folks I'm forgetting, available to answer questions about how our business runs. So thank you again for being here. Really appreciate you all making the trip, dedicating your time, and happy to answer a couple questions if folks have any questions. Mr. Rossi.
You're putting tremendous capital investment into your parks after acquisition. How do you budget for that? Where does that money come from?
I think you should answer that.
So when we do our diligence, we try and figure out what our plans are for the first 2 to 3 years of the property. What roads are going to be repainted, what trees are going to be removed or trimmed, what homes are going to have to be demolished, what sites are going to have to be upgraded, and we try to come up with a CapEx plan. We've recently become a little more sophisticated at that, working with the partners who are here with us who help us kind of do that analysis. And typically, we're doing a combination of either raising that capital up front, or raising some of that capital up front and working with lenders that'll give us what we call a CapEx earn-out, where we'll say, they're going to lend us 70% of the purchase price. They'll say, we'll lend you 70% of the upgrades that you're going to make to the community as well, recognizing that those are upgrades to the value of the property and their collateral is being.
Guys, this is fantastic. It's a new asset class for us, I think, for Apples. What keeps you up at night? This is rosy, but what's the plane crash? And, what's the top 2 risks in the next 5 years, I think?
Top 1 is easy.
Yeah. So
cost of capital.
Yeah. No. So the question is, what are the biggest risks that keep us up at night? I think the biggest risk by a long shot is political and regulatory risk. We are in a frequently maligned asset class, and I could give this exact same presentation, right? And one group of people will say, wow, you guys are doing an incredible job upgrading affordable housing and living by your mission of high quality housing for our residents and high quality returns for investors. And another group of people can see the exact same presentation and say, you guys are predators who are cranking rents on people who can't afford it. And I clearly don't believe them. And I'm out there advocating for our industry and writing op-eds, and I testified in a congressional hearing here in Denver not long ago, speaking up about what we're actually doing. But there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of prejudice against our asset class, which can lead to rent control risk and other issues for us as investors.
So in the early days, you guys did one-off deals, and as a small individual investor, seeing those. Now we do funds, right? So you present the Carolina Route 9, I guess, mobile home parks. Is that something that Fund 2 invested in, or Fund 1, or is that something that was done as a one-off with institutional investors? How does it work?
So we did the Carolinas portfolio as a 1031 exchange for the investor who sold that Turf Mobile Manor in Phoenix. That was the $35 million sale a few months ago.
Yeah.
They needed an exchange. We put those investors into the Carolinas portfolio. And this is actually a part of our evolution as a company, where our initial capital raises were $500,000, and we really, we knock on doors and try and raise that money. I think you remember those days. And Fund 2, our most recent fund, was $22 million in equity, which is, we've grown, but it's still tiny by commercial real estate standards. And if we see an opportunity that needs a $20 million equity check, we don't yet have a capital partner where we can knock on the door and say, hey, you want to do this deal with us? And they say yes. We don't have a captive pool. And we actually did speak to institutional funds and some others who have the capacity to write checks of that size. And given the market uncertainty and interest rates over the last few months, it's interesting. They say they have a strong thesis on manufactured housing, but no one really bid on the deal. And so we ended up doing it with the sellers of the turf property. We'd like to grow to a point where we have enough money in our funds that we can take on portfolios like that.
No, I think when we started the company, we had this premise of any property we buy will hold forever. That's kind of like how Daniel's family has grown their wealth in their portfolio. Our mindset shifted a little bit, where if people will offer you the same prices that are borderline unjustified, you should sell. And if you think that a park is in a high fire risk and it might not be there in 20 years, you probably should try and hold it for 20 years. So we've selectively decided to sell assets, and every property we've sold, we've given investors the opportunity to either get their money out or do a 1031 exchange. So of the 14 or 15 properties we bought this year so far, 10 of them were purchased from the proceeds of the turf sale, and 2 of them were purchased from the proceeds of the Foothills property, which we sold last December. And so we haven't done a lot of capital raising this year because we've been recycling capital for sales.
Cito.
I had a great conversation with Corey a while ago, but it's sort of a follow-up to that. I didn't think to ask him that question. You do have some renters, not all of them are owners. And he also mentioned that many of them are working class people. What if some bad things happen and they're unable to make 1 month's rent or a second month rent, or do you cut some slack for them? How do you deal with those? People who are truly unable to pay the rent, however they're good people, good heart and everything else. How do you deal with that?
So in case folks didn't hear, Corey, I'm going to ask you to answer this if you want to stand up and maybe address the group here. The question was, how do we deal with folks who are good people and they're low income and they miss rent 1 month or maybe 2 months? Is it zero tolerance? What do we do?
Sure. We're fortunate to have a system called Rent Manager that tracks their payment history. So we know if they're a good paying resident, they fall in hard times, we can work with that. In the end, we try to follow our lease, and we try to guide them to resources where they can get help to pay their rent. Some states require us to go through a process to, like Washington, for instance, pretty stringent on you have to do a payment plan with them and offer them resources, and that works. We want to retain those residents because most of our residents are homeowners, and losing them would just cause us a problem. We would have to take over their home, we have to remodel their home, invest capital into it, so we like to see people retain. We've done a really good job at collections to keep people in their homes. This year we're at 98% collections from January 1st to July 31st. So I think that is pretty telling. We've kind of trained them to pay. We've given them all sorts of options to pay rent. But yeah, I don't think we're heartless.
That really was my question, really. It is not the people who pay regularly, promptly. But it's the people who fall on hard times. How do you deal with that? That's what
We try to provide resources.
I'll give you
Because
an
there's lots out there. And in some cases, people just don't want to pay, and they want to take advantage of the system, and we recognize that, and they have to go.
I'll give you a couple examples. There's a Corey set up, I don't know the name of the vendor, it does the split monthly payments. You know, Flex.
Yeah,
So Corey came in and set up a system where residents who don't have all the rent on the first of the month, they can pay, I don't know, some number of dollars, that's not a lot, $15, $20, and they can split their rent. And essentially this company will finance half of their rent for half the month. And so we rolled that out across our portfolio. Economically, it's actually bad for us because late fees are great business. But we'd rather give our residents an opportunity to stay current on their rent and not pay late fees because it's serving them better. Another example is we have actually voluntarily created in Washington we have it, in Oregon we have it, it's like a rent assistance program for residents that can demonstrate that they're below minimum income. It's administered by a third-party law firm that we work with, and they apply and they get reviewed, and if they have low income, we actually give them a 10% reduction on their rent. And there's a cap on how many people we'll do that with. We make that resource available for our residents because we don't want to find the people who are on hard times are getting priced out or getting kicked out. At the same time, we do want to make sure that everyone's paying their rent. Thankfully, for the most part, we've been able to. And I'd say if you look at our evictions, we have evictions. I don't know the percentage, but most of the evictions are happening in the first year of acquisition. I can think of one property we bought last year in Texas. It was bad. It was worse than we expected. We've got a lot of evictions. And, you know, like Corey said, people who don't want to pay rent are going to ride the system. Like, in some cases, it takes us a long time to get out because the system is really designed to protect people, which is a good thing. Like, we have people in Washington who haven't paid us for over a year, and we're going through the eviction process, and it takes a long time, all the while they're not paying rent. But that happens very infrequently in properties that we've stabilized. So when we buy a property, there are some people who, you know, aren't going to clean up their lots, aren't going to follow the rules, aren't going to stop doing or selling drugs out of their home. There is some of that cleanup we have, but once we get the properties in line, the eviction rate is very low. And it's something we really like about the asset class.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great question.
Maybe we'll do one more question if there are any out there. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I was going to say I was surprised that interest rates weren't a higher risk from the earlier question. And it sounds like you've been able to combat that with like 1031 exchanges and using and leveraging more equity than debt maybe. Could you speak to how that's going?
Yeah, we've been in a pretty fortunate place. I think we don't have any floating debt. So as rates have gone up, we're kind of locked in. We know that we always project our business model. We need to be able to refinance. And the worst case would be you run out of your first loan, which is usually 5 years, and then you need to go to investors to get more money because rates have gone up so high that the loan you would take out now cannot be supported. Like the income the property is generating now cannot support that loan. We stress test that when we're projecting and building our projections for our deals, and we know that there are very few deals we do that we're going to go in, we're going to raise rents 3%, and it's fully occupied, it's fully stabilized. Because the people who are buying those properties are paying $35 million for something that was 16 years ago. We don't have that cost of capital, it's not kind of what we do. So we go in and we massively improve properties and we increase income, we cut expenses, so we know that we're going to be creating a lot of value. The risk could be that our returns won't be as high, but we are always checking to make sure that that would be a really bad case scenario of we go to refinance and we need to call capital. Thankfully, that's never happened. We've never had to do a capital call, and that's what we try to make sure we're not going to do.
Sorry, that's not true. We used to say we never had to do a capital call. We had to do one on Puyallup River RV Park.
It's true. You're right.
That is our one exception. Our investors are in the room, and I'm not ashamed of it.
But it wasn't.
I'm happy to tell the story. If anyone wants to know about our failures, I'm
I
happy
don't
to
know
talk
if
about that
I
deal.
don't know if I'd call that a capital call because we did offer to put the money in.
It's true. We have to put it ourselves, so we
Yeah.
believed in the deal. It's true.
Yeah. So that's something. It's a good question, and debt definitely can compress returns, and timing of the cycle is going to be a big result of any real estate investment. But we feel like we have a solution.
So thank you guys so much for coming. As I said, we've got a shortbread buffet here. Cocktail servers will come around with drinks. We got pool tables, darts, and I hope you guys will come say hi. Not just to me, but to the whole team, right? All the 3 Pillars folks who you met. Would love to meet you and shake hands.